What is up, guys? So we're back here. We are cleaning up the back end of this Corvette. As you can see, we got the frame, nice coating of undercoat on everything, looking nice and clean back here. So now we're gonna get that cross member for the differential together, and then we will start dropping the control arms in. We got to set up the shims for the toe and get that squared away, and then we can start assembling the spindles and bearings and all that good stuff. And then we can start, I guess we can start putting that differential in there with the brackets. So stay tuned.
So here is the differential cross member. I'm needle scaling it and placing the new bushings in. It's a job all on its own, very difficult to do. But get it all painted up.
Alright, so now we've got the control arms out. We dug all the dirt out of there. These are the shims that came out of it. I have them separated left and right. So basically, just as an eyeball to try to get it back to where it was, we're going to try to match up with some new shims on these, same size. These are a little rusty, so it's going to be hard to get it exact, but we've got these size shims on the inside, this on the outside. The inner shims will set your toe, so you definitely don't want to mess that up. And, once it's all done, we'll check it. I believe we want a total overall 1/8 inch in on the toe in reference to the front wheels, and maybe 1/2 degree of camber. So we'll try to set it up as best we can before we can get it out to the alignment shop.
So here are the new shims. You'll notice they're slotted on the end, not like the originals that have holes on both ends. These are a lot easier to slip in to the bolt inside the pocket. Clean that up with a wire brush, blow it out with compressed air. The cleaner the better. It's not that critical though. But we're going to shoot it with some undercoat to clean it up and protect it from the elements. Same on the passenger side. It's looking pretty good. We're going to slide our trailing arms in. Bolt goes in from the inside, a washer, and the castle nut. So you don't need to tighten this down just yet because we need to install our shims. Now there's a trick that you can use to install these shims. You can either place it on your head or you can use a ratchet strap to tie up the trailing arms so your shims go in nice and easy. Do the same on the driver's side and raise them up with the ratchet strap, slip your shims in, and we should be good to go. You want to line those up with the cotter pin hole, and then you can drop them down. Now we're building the trailing arms. We install all the appropriate hardware and pieces. We got the caliper brackets and all. So we're sticking our studs on by hand and just threading the nuts down hand tight. Now I like to use an air hammer to press these studs in. Now you can install them just like wheel studs, but I feel that this way there's no bolt fatigue and I can ensure that those studs are fully seated inside the trailing arm. Now we're going to replace the bump stops. Now there's not a lot of room to work with on the top where the nut sits. Sometimes they can get quite rusty, so if they are, you can just use a hacksaw or a sawzall to saw that stud off and then pull it out from the top. Shoot it with some undercoat to prevent any further rusting, and then we're going to install our stainless steel brake shoe hardware. So we'll go ahead and stick our backing plates on. When you go to put your backing plates on, make sure you have your emergency brake levers installed in the backing plates as well as the rearward shoe pins because they're captured by the caliper brackets. Install some anti-seize on all the moving parts, then we can go ahead and lock them down, torque them. Install your shoe center pin. You want to make sure that this is pretty lined up. You can have your small tabs at the top, large ones at the bottom. Torque her down, and then you're going to hammer the small ears of the French lock onto the bolt, and that will prevent it from ever backing out. Do the same for the driver's side. Don't forget your pins. Now we can install our brake shoes after we torque these down. Make sure they're fully seated, and then hammer it down. Don't forget your pin again, And now we can install the brake shoes. These can be a pain. Just hang them on the clips first, followed by the springs. You're going to use the smaller spring at the bottom and the longer spring at the top. You want to have the bottom of that spring, that arm, facing down. Now install your adjusters. The passenger side, the adjuster faces the front, and the driver's side, the adjuster star faces the rear of the vehicle. You can install them either way. Now on these flanges, I'm just knocking out the original dust deflectors, and I'm installing the new deflectors that we got. This isn't very necessary, but it's going to look nice once it's all in the car. Just a little bit of added extra detail in this build. So now we can mock up the bearings. So I've got all my parts here, my seals, my bearings. You have an inner race and an outer race. The outer race is smaller than the inner race, so don't mix those up. And then go ahead and hammer in your races. You want to make sure they're fully seated inside the trailing arm and there's no gaps in between the race and the inside of that pocket. It'll make a definite thud once you know that they're fully bottomed out. And then you can do a visual check and feel it for yourself to make sure they're fully seated. Now we're mocking up the bearing assembly using a mock-up spindle tool. Now we want to shoot for 1/1000ths to 8/1000ths of bearing clearance. So it may take a couple tries. You can mock it up by hand until you kind of get the right idea by just holding it in by hand. And then once you get it in the ballpark, you want to go ahead and torque them down to 100 foot-pounds. Now you can check the bearing clearance by placing a dial indicator on the end, and you want to figure out what shim you're going to need to use. So we're shooting for 1/1000ths ideally, so we're going to mock it up with different size shims. Now if your shims don't get you right where you want to be, you can try swapping out those collars. Different aftermarket collars are at different sizes, I often find, so sometimes the combination can get you the correct clearance that you need. It's very critical that you get this correct, because if you do not have the clearance right, you may eat up your bearings prematurely. So that's about 5/1000ths clearance right there. So we're going to try it out with another size shim, try to knock it down because we're shooting to make it very tight. So now we've got about 2/1000ths of clearance, so we're going to call that a win on this one. So we'll take it all back apart and we can start it up for final assembly. So we're not going to assemble them yet. We got to lube up the bearings, so I'm going to mark each side so I know and what the clearance was. So here we are packing the bearings. I've already set up the driver's side off camera. Now when you're packing the bearings, you want to make sure you actually see the wheel bearing grease. It's a high temp wheel bearing grease. You want to see them coming out of the rollers on the end. I like to go from the large side and just squish them into the bearing rollers. If you don't do this, the bearings will install dry and you'll have premature bearing failure. So now you want to take any remaining grease that you got and load up the inside pockets. Try to avoid getting any grease on the sealing surface. It's not absolutely critical, but for a perfect seal, you don't want any grease on the sealing surface. So if you do, just wipe it down with brake cleaner and then hammer your seals in. Larger seal goes on the outside, skinnier seal goes on the inside. So now is a good time to install your dust deflectors. As you can see in this video, I didn't do it in that order in this particular sequence. This is how you install them on car on most jobs. Just use a pipe and a hammer and you'll be able to get it seated. This is the correct way to do it. If you got it all apart, might as well, it's a lot easier. So we'll get the passenger side installed. For final assembly, you can use a pry bar on the wheel studs. You just don't want to ding the wheel studs. Otherwise you will have a cross thread bolt, and that's no fun. So we'll go ahead and take it back apart. We'll do the final assembly and lock it down. You want to torque these to 100 foot-pounds and then line up the next notch while tightening further. So we've got our cotter pin in. We can can lock it in. You only need one ear, tap it all in nice and compact, and then you can clip off the long end.
That is pretty much it. That is how you install trailing arm bearings, and that's how you set them up. The end play you're looking for is about 1,000 to 8 thousandths of an inch in play. So 1 thousandths to 8 thousandths will get you right in the area you want to be. I set this one up with 3 thousandths and this one here with 2 thousandths. So I like to keep them on the tighter side. Preferably if you can get them within 1 thousandths, you know, that's ideal for my standards. But you know, pretty much you can't go wrong, you know, all the way up to 8 thousandths. So there's a selection of shims, and basically we went with the smallest shims that I had available. So I've got a good selection, so I don't think they make another size. Another thing you can do if you can't find the exact shim size, you can switch out the collars like I ended up doing on, I believe it was the left side, and that may give you the difference of a few thousandths and get you where you need to be. So that's pretty much it. If this video was helpful for you guys, don't forget to give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more. We will continue working on the beautiful 74 coming up shortly. So stay tuned. We're going to start on that Shark Bite rear suspension, so I'll do an install video on that. As you can tell, we've got her all cleaned up under here. So it's coming together really nicely. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks for watching.